Hello again, and welcome to The Inquisitive Atheists. This is episode number 2, and we're recording on October 5th, 2013. And I got the date right this time because I did listen back and I did get the wrong date.
It was really funny.
Yeah.
It was really funny because the first episode get the date wrong. Wow.
Who
cares? Dates aren't important, right?
Yeah. So I'm one of your hosts, Jason Camerano, and once again with me is Garrett Geisler.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on this very hot and windy day in California.
And so we just want to get a little bit of the housekeeping stuff out of the way first. Feel free to email us with any comments, criticisms, feedback at... no, that's not the email address. The email address is talk@theinquisitiveatheists.com, but send your feedback there. So go ahead and send us anything you want to discuss. If you want to talk about any topic in particular, you can send us an email there and we can read it on the show.
Yeah, for sure. Ideas as well. Like if you have any particular thoughts on how we can make the podcast better by including some sort of topic or something that you saw in some other atheist or free thought / secular podcast, YouTube video, whatever. Just let us know.
So we're a free thought, open forum podcast. We like talking about religion in our day-to-day lives. We like to talk with we're going to like to talk with guests in the future from both sides of the equation, religious and non-religious. And we like to do research. I like to always be asking questions, and
hence inquisitive.
Hence the inquisitive. Yep. So I cleared up my mistake from last week about the date. I'd also like to clear up one other mistake. I kept calling that church I was going to in Yucaipa Cal Baptist, which obviously Garrett did point out was part of the Cal Baptist University thing. That is actually not the name of the church. It's called First Baptist. So it shows how much I was paying attention to the actual title of the church.
You'll be getting a bill in the mail for the representation of that.
And undermining Cal Baptist.
How dare you?
So that's my only thing that I was wanting to point out from last week that I kept, because I said it a lot of times. Also, another thing I said a lot of times was yada yada yada. Apparently.
So when you do it this time, I'm going to be like, stop it immediately. You're done.
Yeah, I noticed it last time. I was like, oh my gosh. You can even tell if you're listening to the podcast the exact moment I realized I used it too much and stopped using it.
Stop saying this. All right, so introductions
done, out of the way.
Whatever we call it.
Yep.
The beginning of the show, that's how it's going to go. It's like...
quick topic, just quick, we're going to cover any mistakes and stuff we made from previous podcasts or anything that we caught. So, and then just basically telling where to get a hold of us.
Right, now the guts of the show.
Yep.
Current events.
First topic is we're going to current events. So Garrett, you put an item here called Blasphemy Day. Apparently that was this week.
Blasphemy Day. I mean, it's new. It legitimately new. 2009. Some guy contacted Center for Inquiry and he was like, we should have something that promotes critical thinking, rational thinking. And so Blasphemy Day was born, September 30th every year. And so this year, I didn't really even know about it until the day of, but as soon as I did, I felt it was my goal to let other people know that there is now a day just to not necessarily ridicule religion, but to openly question things that ought to be questioned. And religion is, I think, warrants all questioning that we can possibly muster up. So, September 30th, next year, 2014.
Yeah, let's wake up.
Put on your thinking caps.
Put on your thinking cap, or put on your little cap that says, God damn it, or something.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Put a blasphemer.
Yeah. Blasphemy, the one and only victimless crime.
All right. Only.
So that's Blasphemy Day. And we have another topic here about it has to do with the United States government shutdown.
Yeah.
And
if you're listening to us from outside the U.S., this most recent event for, I guess, all Americans, basically government is not around for this week. They're
shut down. It's a problem between both parties in the terms of the Republicans are not wanting to fund the Obamacare. They want certain provisions and ways to kind of get out of it for another year, or at least opt out for individuals, because the individual mandate thing was going to go into effect this week, and they are trying to say that it shouldn't be required yet for another year because next year is another senatorial election. So anyway, the government has been basically at a stalemate over this topic. It's been basically quote unquote shut down, and national parks and other things have also been shut down. Anything that has been government run, federally funded, has been shut down.
And so when these types of things happen, when you have major outcry of different factions of or political parties, one of those political parties is conservatives. And who are the majority of conservatives are religious people. And so we got these religious leaders, this guy, one guy in particular, from Morning Star. He has basically said that we need to have a military coup.
Yeah. Well, we can. Yeah, we'll let him speak his own words for what he wants out of this government shutdown. So we'll let him take it away.
And it will not last. I mean, there's no way our republic can last much longer. It may not last through Obama's second term. There are a lot of people that feel that, it can't. There are forces at work right now seeking to undermine and to destroy the republic. There's almost a glib and almost a joyful disregard of the Constitution, a belittling of the Constitution. We can't make it without that. That's our foundation, our moorings. We're headed for serious tyranny, for a terrible tyranny right now. Now, if you don't change your direction, you'll end up where you're headed. But that's where we're headed, so until there's a direction change, that's where we're headed. That's where we're going to end up. But guess what? The kingdom is coming. The kingdom of God is coming. And America is not the kingdom of God. We're not the New Jerusalem. I think we've been used in some wonderful and powerful ways by God. We've been one of the most generous nations in history. We've done so much good, and that's why I appeal to the Lord. Don't let us be totally destroyed. Please raise up those who will save us. And as I've started telling friends for a long time, that no election's going to get the right person in there that can restore us, because the system is so broken, so undermined right now, the whole system. I believe our only hope is a military takeover, martial law, and that the most crucial element of that is who the marshal is going to be.
So from that, I think we can gather there are crazies out there, and some of these rather fanatic people have a little more say than others. And this guy is the leader of Morning Star Ministries. He's the head of this conglomerate church, or ministries of many churches. And so when he says these types of things, it doesn't fall on deaf ears. People hear it. A lot of people probably agree with him. So where's all this fear-mongering? I mean, why do we have so much fear-mongering over something that legitimately is probably not as diabolical as he's talking about?
Right. And there's quite a few other things. I mean, this guy is an extremist in what he says, and I know it doesn't represent every Christian's views or every religious person's views on what should be done. But these things are out there, and this is the thing that is frightening, because these people have their voice, and they have their voice on YouTube. They have their voice, and it can be heard, and it can grow. And so we just kind of want to talk about these things, and like he throws out a lot of key words that are you hear in a lot of these different videos. And I've heard it from other religious people that I've had debates with, that this country needs to change direction. We need to find a new direction. What direction? They never explain what needs to be done. They just say everything needs to change. We need to become more godly. We need to become...
Everything we're doing right now is wrong.
Yeah.
and everything needs to change so that we're doing the right thing. What's the right thing?
That we need to appeal to God. America is not the kingdom of God anymore. And this is not going to be the new Jerusalem, as he pointed out. I mean, these are a bunch of like talking points that they get out there in their speeches that resonate with the faithful and the followers, and they know these key points, and when they hear it, they start to like they follow along. They don't take this stuff critically, and they don't think about this stuff skeptically, and just understand that it's like, what is it that he's exactly wanting from this? There's no outcome from this video that can be derived from what he's saying. I mean, aside from the fact that he wants a military takeover, a martial law, to take over what? I mean, to take over us and impose a Christian martial that will put us back into the Dark Ages? I mean,
so normally I wouldn't worry too much about this because there's these fanatical people everywhere, fundamentalists that think the government's going down the tube and we need to take it over and recover it. But I am slightly concerned because there is a report from the Military Religious Freedom Foundation that says, and I quote, "We estimate that between 28 and 34% of officers and NCOs, that's non-commissioned officers, in the U.S. military would either back or be extremely sympathetic to Joyner." And Joyner is the head of the ministries. That's the guy that we just listened to. So when we have roughly a third of the military that would be like, I agree with what this guy said, that's alarming, that's concerning, because these guys have weapons, and obviously they're part of our military, and I don't want a government or a military takeover of my government. That does not, although there is technically no government running right now, so yeah. Who could take over what?
Yeah, the ones with the guns are going to join up with the civilians with the guns and take over the government.
Yeah, so just another case in point of this is why religion is dangerous, I guess, in that it can point people direction, a large amount of people in a direction that is terrifying and dangerous.
And yes, there are good things that come from religion, but what we need to stop doing as a society is using our religious dogmas as a crutch to base our own judgments on. We use it and we say, the Bible says this, the Bible says this. Even if we know, we might not know. Even as a society, we deem this to be immoral. Like, for example, slavery. You can't go anywhere in the Bible and not see where slavery is not a part of the story. It's condoned in the Bible. There's nowhere in there that says slavery is wrong. Obey thy master, yada yada. I did it right there. I said it.
Don't worry about it.
It'll
go over it. Go over
it. Using this book that was written thousands of years ago and not amending it, they are amending it in certain ways. I mean, that's what these different religious sects do, is they take certain things and they alter it to their own.
Yeah, pushing it, we're pulling, screaming. You know, we're pulling, and they're fighting tooth and nail to not change their dogma. But they're being pulled in the 21st century. Eventually, they're changing slowly and without any sort of remorse. They don't want to change, but they have to, or else they will just be by the side, and a different religion that's less like Unitarianism will come along, and it's seen as more
secular for
right, exactly.
And this you see all religions doing this, but they're still holding back on this crutch, and they still look back to this book that has so many immoral passages in it and things that we don't do to this day, but yet there's certain areas that they still can't let go of. I mean, we can, as a topic for another time, is the whole gay marriage. I mean, that's something that they can't let go of. I mean, you look at maybe 200 years, it won't be a problem anymore. But it's just, the thing is, when you have this built-in dogma that has been preached to you day after day and just set in stone in your mind, it's hard to let go of. instead of like open your mind and thinking critically, you back away as soon as something that conflicts with your state of mind comes into play.
And you obviously have this preacher who you would appear has your best interest at heart, but probably not. He has his own agenda. Obviously, his marshal. He wants some guy who he approves to marshal America to this new stage, to this new way of living. And who's he going to appoint? Who's this guy?
This kingdom is coming type discussion is like, is that supposed to mean the end is coming, the end is near? Well, if the end is near, why do you care? If you're going to die and you're going to get into heaven, and I mean everything's going to be good for you, it's almost like, why are you caring so much about what's happening in this finite? Why do you have to impose all this religion and these religious dogmas on a finite speck of time and an eternity of heaven? It's
negligible. You don't need.
It's negligible.
Right.
Live your life how you feel you should live your life. If you're a godly person, live your life. Don't impose it onto others. Live your life how you feel it should be lived. If harm or if other, like, if
the way you would live your life would inflict harm on others, that's not a good way to live.
If other people, and if the way that if the way of the society is starting to go that is starting to harm others, speak up. Go in that direction to say this is harming others physically. Gay marriage does not harm anybody else. I mean, that's the perfect example. It's your own deep-seated belief about its immorality. It's harming those two people that are having the relationship, but when it doesn't harm them, and they are willingly accepting such a lifestyle, which is, live your life in accordance to how you want to live it, as long as it doesn't affect others in a negative way.
Right. So moving on.
Well, we'll move on to the next topic then. What's next on the list?
Not the greatest of people, but...
Oh, yes. So this week, Bill O'Reilly was on Jon Stewart on Monday, talking about his new book, Killing Jesus, which had some funny interviews, not on Jon Stewart per se, but there was another one with another media lady who he said that this book was inspired by God, that God came down and told him to write this book.
Killing Jesus. Yeah. God said, write about me.
Yeah, basically, write this book, because I've not read the book, so I can't critique the book, but this is a part of in his line of killing books. Killing Lincoln and Killing Jefferson, I believe, are the two books prior to this one. And this kind of brought me back to a video with him back in the day with David Silverman,
who is the president of American Atheists?
American Atheists, I believe. Yeah, he's the president of that. And David Silverman was on the show to talk about these billboards that were going up along the freeway.
Segment tonight, just before Christmas, an atheist group purchased a giant sign outside the Lincoln Tunnel here in New York City that said belief in Jesus as God is, quote, a myth. Then just last weekend, another sign appeared, this one in Huntsville, Alabama. The message says this about religion: they're all scams, picturing Christian, Jewish, and Islamic symbols on the sign. So what's going on? With us now, David Silverman, president of the American Atheist Group, which is responsible for both billboards. So why the insults?
Well, they're not insults. They're truths.
We just heard Nancy Pelosi said that it's pay as you go. So let's try to get into the truth.
This isn't about pay as you go. This is about telling the truth. Now, if people get offended because we're saying what we believe,
no.
That's not us insulting.
Let's just be regular guys instead of I'm a Catholic, you're atheist. We're just regular guys now, okay? You say something's a scam.
Yep,
on a sign. And then you come in here where millions of people are watching you and say that's not an insult. What does the word scam mean to you?
Scam means it's deliberately misleading people. And
that's not an insult?
It's not an insult to the people. The people are just following.
It's not an insult to the people?
It's a statement to the people who are following the religion. And really, it's attacking the people who are in the pews. Wait a second.
Wait. Now, I'm stick with the insult, because this is certainly an insult in my opinion, and I know I'm not the smartest guy in town, but okay, so religion is a scam, but it's not the people's fault. They've just been lured in.
That's right.
Whose fault is it?
It's the leaders of the religion.
The leaders.
Of course.
All right.
I mean, this is not brain surgery.
The Pope,
The Pope, absolutely.
Right.
Look,
all of
this
these
is not
people.
brain surgery, and this is not world news. Everybody knows religion is a scam. The only news here is
Everybody
that
knows.
people
I
are
don't
saying
know,
it.
Mr. Silverman.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't. I got to tell you
You
that.
sit here and you're skeptical every day, and then you go to church and you get on your knees and you pray to an
Correct.
invisible man in the sky.
Invisible
and you
man
don't
in the
think
sky.
That's a scam?
No, I don't.
You look
you know,
at a
and I'll tell you
statue of
why.
a man that was
You know,
built by a man.
I'll tell you why it's not a scam, in my opinion. All right? Tide goes in, tide goes out. Never a miscommunication. You can't explain that. You can explain why the tide goes in.
Tide goes in, tide goes
See, the
out.
water, the tide comes in and it goes out, Mr. Silverman.
Maybe
it
it's
always comes
Thor
in
on top of
it
Mount
goes
Olympus
out.
who's making the tides go in and
No,
out.
no, but you can't explain
A scam and a
that.
myth are the same. The
You can't
myth
explain
and
it.
religion are the same thing. It doesn't matter if I can explain it.
It doesn't?
That doesn't mean that an invisible magic man in the sky is doing it.
And you're free to believe that. But when you insult...
We're not
All right.
insulting. Look, there are thousands
You're
of billboards.
calling religion a
Listen,
scam and a myth.
It is a scam and it is a myth, but that's a statement of fact. If you get insulted
It is
by
not a statement of fact.
Of course it's
a statement of
fact.
belief.
It's an invisible man
no,
in the sky.
that's what you believe.
This
it's not a fact.
This country is filled with billboards attacking atheists, and this country has several
All right,
billboards.
show me, tell me where there's one attacking
just go all up and down the New Jersey Turnpike, and you'll see that we're going to hell, we're going to burn, hell is real.
I've
we're
never
going to be
seen
God.
one like that.
Oh, you
Can
haven't
you tell
been
me what
looking.
exit it is? I'd like to go see it.
8A, go ahead.
All right, and
you
who
can see
bought
it.
that?
It doesn't matter. The point is they're allowed to say what they want to say, and we're
And
allowed
so
to
are
say
you.
what we're allowed to say.
Okay.
So there's a couple things I want to discuss about this video, primarily coming from where I understand where Bill O'Reilly is coming from in the fact that he finds that this billboard is offensive. And I know that offense can be taken in a lot of different ways. It's different things to different people, different ways to take offense. And yes, people can take offense to this billboard, which I don't
didn't
think
use the word offense, though, did he?
Yeah, he said it was offensive. I believe is what he said at the beginning. He said it was offensive, or it was an insult.
It's an insult.
Insult,
yes.
yeah, insults, yes. Which it can be. It can be.
Okay, so in my mind, it's an insult to a devout believer because you're insulting something that they've believed for potentially their whole lives.
Right.
And you're saying you know it's not true, but you still believe it anyway because you want it to be true, or you think that there are some facets of it that might be true.
Right.
And it's an insult because
it's an insult. But I think David Silverman went around. It took him a while to get to the point that he needed to make, where he explained that there were other billboards that that said you're going to hell, that can be taken as an insult towards non-believers or basically threats. These billboards are allowed to say what they're allowed to say. I mean, it's the freedom of speech thing.
Right.
And that's where I think he needed to go, instead of saying that they're not insults. And also I think that he was saying that everybody knows, that's what the billboard says, you know they are a scam. And then he says specifically to Bill O'Reilly, everybody knows they're a scam, which is not true, because the people who are religious don't know.
It's very curious that David would use those choice words to say everyone knows. So it was a very interesting choice of words. So I mean, I think it really has more to do with he's trying to make you think. He's trying to make the listeners, the vast majority that listen to Bill O'Reilly are conservative Christians, trying to make them think about just what he's saying. Do I know it's do I know it's not a scam? Why am I? He's just playing. He's stirring the pot is what he's doing.
He's stirring the pot, and sometimes the pot he might stir it a little too quickly with some of these things. I mean, you can get a billboard up there that might say, you can live a fulfilling life without God, or something like that, where you can kind of show the upside rather than the downside.
And I'm going to get into that.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in the next topic. But we'd also like to talk about Bill O'Reilly's kind of counter argument of the tide goes in, tide goes out, and the classic David Silverman WTF face when Bill O'Reilly's trying to explain you can't explain the tide goes in, tide goes out.
And so David Silverman has done an AMA on Reddit, Ask Me Anything type of discussion thread on Reddit, and somebody asked him, why don't you just say the moon and the sun control the tides? Why don't you just say it? And so David Silverman replies with, because it wouldn't have mattered what I responded with. Bill O'Reilly has his character on his show,
And that's
would not have accepted that as an answer. He would have immediately turned the topic to something else, to where it didn't matter that the moon and the sun's gravity controls tides.
Yeah.
It had no bearing. So he was like, I didn't even want to. David didn't even want to entertain his ridiculousness of tie goes in, time goes out. Never a miscommunication. Didn't even want to entertain it.
And I guess that therein lies the problem going on talk shows where you have like a 4-minute, 5-minute window to get your point across with a character such as Bill O'Reilly, or such, I mean, I can even go on the other side, such as Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert. These aren't people that you're going to be having a long, thoughtful conversation with where you can have this type of debate. And
exactly.
And then I can kind of see a point to kind of stir the pot vigorously with David Silverman coming on to have this billboard saying, they're all scams, just to get the word out there. But whether or not this is going to pose a positive or negative effect to people's outlook or people's view on atheists it's sometimes hard to see. I mean, most of this stuff circulates on the internet, on YouTube and other social media networks, where there is far more of a non-believer population where this can kind of spread. But sometimes you don't know how this is going to backfire, what the results are going to be from such a video, and being on these talk shows with these different characters that only give you a certain amount of time to talk.
Right. Or anything else you wanted to touch on?
That's kind of all I wanted to touch on that one. So
all right. So next current event, I found this past week or possibly 2 weeks ago. Atheists are trying to get Sunday meetings, church meetings. It's a weird way to say it, but
assembly is basically what the article says.
Exactly, atheist assembly. So basically, it started in England, where once out atheists, they wanted to get the church community back. They wanted to feel a sense of groupness and closeness and the community aspect that you get from going to church when you're an atheist. So they wanted to have the ritualistic week meetings between all these people that are like-minded, in this term atheists. It's interesting that we're not really like-minded in that we are like-minded because we don't think there's anything in the sky.
We all share one common
disbelief,
and that is the lack of belief in a deity. There can be liberal atheists, conservative atheists,
right,
atheists that believe in ghosts, atheists that believe in Bigfoot.
Exactly. You could have these mythological creatures, that atheists believe, but they still don't believe in a god.
Yep.
But they could believe other crazy stuff. So, on the thought of atheists holding assemblies, I'm kind of 50-50 in that I think, one, it's good for the atheists because they can now have a sense of community again. They can meet with other people that at least one thing they have in common. And in this case, this is a pretty large thing that some people can be alienated to have to hold this non-belief. And on the other hand, I don't like it because we're not... There's no dogma. Atheism has no dogma, no inherent dogma. There's nothing that says you have to believe it this way, you have to believe this, you have to believe that. That's not how it works.
And I was kind of thinking about that last time when we were on the podcast last time talking and saying the word atheism. It's like it's almost sounding like there's more to it than just the lack of belief in God.
Right, atheism is not a religion.
Yeah, and it's almost like maybe the word atheism is something that can be maybe omitted from common colloquialism. Maybe it's not atheism, it's just you're an atheist, you're a non-believer. It's like there's no ism to it. That's
a good point.
I don't know, like I guess I look more into like what when someone's saying atheism, it's like
but at that point it's just a word, and humans give words definition, and you don't have to interpret it that way.
Right, but what are they attached? What is the baggage that's being attached when you say atheism? I mean, there's already a lot of baggage.
Depends on who you ask, obviously.
Yeah, there's already a lot of baggage that comes in when you say you're an atheist.
The definition of a theist is belief in a god. The definition of an atheist is without belief in a god. The prefix "a" stands for without. Yeah. Latin root, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but it's that is it. That's all that you can attach to the definition of atheism. Doesn't mean there is no God. It means you don't believe that a God exists.
Yeah.
So there could be a God up there, but if there is, there's not sufficient evidence for you to believe in one, and that's why I'm an atheist. So that's just the little snippet of this. Well, they're coming to America. That's funny. This group that started this type of assembly, atheist assembly in London, they're trying to get this happening in the United States. And Los Angeles, they're gonna have a meeting in Los Angeles. They're gonna rent out, I think it's a closed down church, and they're gonna meet there to have this sort of assembly. And the people that were running it, from what I read, the guy that was, they're not preachers obviously, but who was hosting, he said basically what I want these assemblies to be is kind of an atheist party. He goes up and he tells jokes and people can just talk about their daily lives. He really just wants to be the host of a gathering. It's not so much a sermon, a preach, it's nothing like that. It's just a way for people to get together that share this common liking.
Right. I mean, similar things are also can be done with other social groups, like the meetup websites. We have meetup websites that are, especially here in the Inland Empire. There's an Inland Empire atheist group that allow for like a community where atheists can go and socialize with other people and do hikes and see different talks and do different events like that. It's not a Sunday to Sunday type basis of assembly, but it's something that is similar to this assembly that we're talking about here in the news article.
It's just not as structured. Yeah, it's not
right.
as
So
devout, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
All right, so the last current event, and this is just small, is there was an ad campaign started recently last week by the Center for Inquiry, and basically the CFI just spent $50,000, which that they get from donations that people like the Center for Inquiry, that they're going to have advertisements that basically say millions of Americans are living happy without religion. So these advertisements are going to appear on billboards or buses where people are going to see them. And one of, so actually many of these places are like Indianapolis, Grand Rapids, and Detroit, New York City, and Washington, D.C. So then all these places have active CFI branches. So it's just another small look where we atheists can live normal, productive, happy, engaging, pleasurable lives without religion.
Right. Well, those are definitely a good. It's a good thing to get, a good word to get out there to people, that we're not just,
baby eating,
fear mongering. We're not fear mongering, fear inducing.
I like the baby eating atheists. Like to become an atheist, you have to be inducted. You have to eat a baby.
Yeah, it's good fiber too.
Not
baby sandwich, baby sub.
Okay, so first break.
Yeah, we'll take a break right now, and we'll come back with our main topic. And
main topic is religion in schools.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, and now we are going to go on to our main topic, which is religion and schools. I mean, this is a big topic. We're only going to touch on a few things. I know we could probably go on and on about this, but we're going to touch on two things.
We're going to try to focus on the semi-current events revolving around religion in schools, because I'm sure we're going to circle back on this in future episodes.
Yeah. So I'm sure some of you might have seen the small little bit of controversy over the Fox News video about the Pledge of Allegiance in schools containing the word under God, and how in, I believe it's Massachusetts, they're trying to take that out of the pledge.
Well, one individual took it to court, tried to get
One
it
individual.
out. Right.
Okay,
It was a parent that took it to court to say this doesn't, because it's a mandatory. It's not mandatory, but they say it every day.
Right.
So if the child doesn't say it, you're basically alienated. You're why aren't you saying the pledge? You know, how can you're not standing up? You're not saying the pledge. Why force them to say anything at all? Well, anyway, we'll let the video talk. We'll let the video explain the situation, and then we'll give our colorful commentary in.
Earlier today, the Massachusetts Supreme Court heard a lawsuit about the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools. An atheist couple wants to remove the phrase "under God," claiming the words violate students' rights. Their attorney explains why.
We have a pledge where children every morning are pledging their national unity and loyalty in an indoctrinational format, in a way that validates religious God belief as truly patriotic, and actually invalidates atheism as second-class citizenry at best, downright unpatriotic at worst.
Well, what he neglects to say is that you don't have to say the pledge if you don't want to say the pledge. But Dana, what do you think about this argument?
I'm tired of them. I remember working at the Justice Department years ago when I first started, I think it was right after 9/11, and a lawsuit like this came through. And before the day had finished, the United States Senate and the House of Representatives had both passed resolutions saying that they were for keeping under God in the pledge. I think that our representatives have spoken over and over again, and that if these people really don't like it, they don't have to live here.
Yeah, that's a good point. But does anybody know whether this under God was added to the pledge, or was it part of it? It was?
It was added. It doesn't matter, though. In God we trust is on our currency, so
right.
Are they saying that they want that removed? Or,
they do.
Or better yet, would the attorney choose not to take U.S. currency, which would be all right with me, too.
Well, Greg, you're not an atheist. We know that you go to church every day. Does this outrage you?
Well, it's a pledge. It's not a prayer. It's a patriotic exercise. In a sense, it's basically saying, thanks for giving us the freedom to be an atheist. This is one of the countries where you don't get killed if you don't adhere to whatever belief system they're forcing down your throat, say in certain countries that we won't mention.
Plus, if you don't believe, then why do you care?
Yeah.
It's just like some guy's name.
But you know, the thing is, though, you have to understand, atheism is not an extreme idea. It's called faith, religious faith, for a reason, because you have faith. The only way you can have faith is if there is no faith to compare it to. So I understand that they are the minority here and they have to deal with these issues.
But why should they be catered to?
We're not
Why are they so special?
What about that?
I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm telling you that I find it offensive that a few people, and these children are pawns from their parents' political statements and beliefs to try and enforce it on everybody else and inflict their belief system. It's incredibly selfish. It's small-minded, and I don't think the court should cater to them. There is no good reason to do so.
Okay, so I mean that's a lot to take in right there on some just ignorant things that they say, especially the last commentary.
But before we can get to the last part, because I can go on for days. But at the beginning, he says, the host of the show says, "Does anyone know if they added under God to the pledge?" And it's like, what? Yeah. What? Why don't you know?
Well, then he
these
says
things?
it doesn't. Then he says it doesn't matter. It's on the currency, but it was also added to the currency
Exactly.
as well. We had it on. I mean, it was added to the paper money in the
Red Scare.
Yeah, the McCarthy area. But it was actually on the coins quite a bit before that. But regardless, it was not originally on any of our currency before then either. And just because it's on something, just because we've been doing it for so long, doesn't mean that we have to continue doing it. I mean, yes,
tradition does not dictate current policy.
And I mean, I'm not a huge like I'm not going out there and saying we need to take under God out of the pledge. We need to do this. It's like currently, from my perspective, like if I were in school and I was hearing it, I just wouldn't say it. But the thing is, that's with my knowledge as it is now. Like as a kid, they're saying it just to say it, and as part of a group.
Well, you say it because you don't know any better,
yeah,
and
a lot,
everyone else is saying it.
And honestly, I think a lot of kids don't even know what it means. Like
I didn't.
Yeah, and I mean, you could probably go through it right now and like say, you have to really think about what some of these words mean and what the actual pledge is trying to say. But I don't know. I almost think that saying the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of class every day it's kind of silly. Like I always thought it was silly as a kid too. Like regardless of the under God thing, just I pledge of allegiance to the flag.
See, the thing is, it's a if you're forced to say the pledge, then you're not truly pledging to your country. You're being controlled by the country in the sense that if we live in a free country, we should have the freedom to choose whether we want to say it or not, and we do have that freedom. Don't get me wrong; they're not saying you have to say it. That's nowhere in there. But the fact that it's a common occurrence every day in the school, and they just do it because they've always done it, that alienates everyone. And I say alienate a lot, but that's what's happening. These children that, while this, I guess we can go to the second part where she talks about that she's offended. These children are pawns of their parents. They're inflicting their beliefs on their children. It's completely ironic.
I know, right? It's like, aren't you? What you're saying right now is exactly what parents are doing to their children when they're bringing them to church, when they're doing all this stuff. And I remember one of my friends talking to me saying like, oh, so are you going to teach your kids evolution? He's like, well, that's the same thing. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm not teaching them that.
I'm teaching them science. Science isn't a belief.
Yeah. Science isn't denouncing a god, or science isn't going to, is not.
Science
doesn't
have a dogma.
Science isn't going out there to disprove religious, concepts. It's going out there. It's taking the evidence that we have, and using that to come up with these I hate to use the word theories, because in science it means something different than hypothesis, which everyone seems to kind of go with.
Exactly.
But we use our observable information in order to determine the facts of the world, like how things work. Science is observing how the world works.
Reproducible experiments always
right, and
come to the same outcome.
Then they talk about observable being, well, you haven't observed all these things. It's like, oh yeah, well, we haven't observed Pluto orbit the solar system since we've known about it, but yet we know it orbits in like 200 and some odd days. We haven't witnessed it, but we know that based on observable evidence of the size of the planet, its elliptical orbit. Yeah, I know. We won't get into this whole is Pluto a planet type thing, which I really don't actually know where it stands.
It's
anymore.
a dwarf planet.
Is it a dwarf planet?
Yes,
now?
for sure.
So it's got the word planet.
It just means it's a big rocky asteroid, a big asteroid.
Fair enough. But in any case, we know it's orbital. We know how long it takes to orbit. So we don't necessarily need to see it orbit in order to know how fast or how long it takes. I mean, well, there's plenty of other ways to observe and to gather information to come to a conclusion. And now we can talk about other things that people were saying. The one lady said that if they don't like it, they don't have to live here.
Right. What was it about the minority part that dovetailed off of that?
Yeah, the other lady brought it up after saying, why should we cater to the minority? Basically, that's
okay. So sorry. So first go. Why should we even, if we don't like it, you don't have to live here? I mean, the United States was founded on religious persecution and taxation without representation, obviously. So
religious freedom in the sense. Oh, America was founded on.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about. So when it was British.
Right, Protestants, and we didn't want to necessarily believe.
Yeah, we wanted to get out of that when America was actually formed, but when we were the colonies and stuff.
Right. So you go back to the roots, and we want to be. That's why we established freedom from religion or lack thereof. You don't have freedom to practice whatever you want or to not practice at all. And if we don't like it, we want to change it to how it was started, how it came about when the Constitution was drafted. So I don't want to leave my country because you're doing something that, if I had a child, I don't agree with. I want to make the Constitution uphold what we originally dictated.
Well, let's go kind of back to what she was saying about the minority. You know, blacks were persecuted in the early 1900s, and they were looked down upon. And
the Constitution is here to protect the minority.
Yeah, and we used to allow slaves even before then. So if they didn't like it, well, why don't they just leave? Why don't these black people just leave? I mean, if they don't like to be a slave, why don't they just leave?
Exactly. You know, we have so many slaves, but they're a minority. Well, tough luck.
Why should we dictate to?
Majority thinks we should have slaves, and that obviously changed when we had the Civil War. You know, North versus South. North didn't want slaves, South didn't. But so you have cases where minorities have rights, and the Constitution is in place to protect their rights. Just because they're a minority doesn't mean they don't have the same rights as every other person in the U.S.
Right, and it's the argument from the majority is another one of our logical fallacies that we'll cover one day. But it's just just because the majority of people think something is right doesn't make it right.
Right, exactly. Okay, so that was
the Pledge of Allegiance, and kind of dovetailed onto
in schools. Okay, yeah. So the other subtopic of religion in schools is homeschooling, because it's not actually in school because you're teaching your kid whatever.
But it's your own version of school. It's another way of education.
And there is a curriculum that you're supposed to follow, but when it gets into the curriculum of science, we have fun. I don't know what you call them. Whether are they parents? Or are they part of a group?
Right here, it sounds like it's part of a group. We're going to be kind of splicing in some sound bites here of this video called Creationists. It's basically these creationists bringing these kids on a museum tour, and they the creationists tell the kids all the lies, quote unquote, that are going on in this museum. So
enjoy.
This is part of it.
The tour begins in the lobby of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science beneath the replica of a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Science is my favorite topic in school. I like seeing all the dinosaurs.
Of the thousands of people who visit every year, on this day it's a group of about 30 homeschooled Christian children and their parents.
We're trained to think like evolutionists. We need to think like creationists, okay?
Okay, so first off, I just want to talk. We're trained to think like evolutionists. We are not trained.
What is an evolutionist?
Yeah, what is an evolutionist? You shouldn't be trained to think like anything. That's the problem. Don't be trained. Think skeptically. Think for yourself.
Critical
Ask
thinking.
questions.
Absolutely.
Critical thinking. This is not someone. We're not telling kids, you need to think like an evolutionist. You need to, think like an atheist.
What is you can't.
I know.
It's preposterous to even. That sentence makes no sense. Think like a evolutionist. Oh, it makes sense when you say think like a creationist, because there's heck of a lot of baggage that gets added with a creationist, because that means you have a dogma, that means you have a religion. But think like an evolutionist? You think science is good? What?
Yeah, I don't understand that. And and the other thing is, I hear these kids saying science is my favorite topic, and that just hurts me, because it's I want to tell these kids, I want to teach these kids and show them how much fun science is. And it's not this the way that he's teaching is just oh, look at all these things, they're so wrong. He's teaching
they got all this wrong.
You got all this wrong. Why does this have to be like this? It's such a cruel way to teach a child.
Let's continue. We need to explain what they're claiming is wrong.
Yeah.
Who knows what BC Tour stands for in BC Tours? It stands for Biblically Correct Tours.
It's a tour from a strictly biblical perspective. Billy Jack and Rusty Carter lead about 100 of these a year, and they've spoken to thousands of children. They are what's called young Earth creationists. Earth is only 6,000 to 10,000 years old, not the 4.5 billion estimated by science.
So these guys go on hundreds of tours with kids from probably different homeschools or different Christian schools, bringing them through this museum, and just explaining everything that's wrong about it. They cherry pick their things, as you'll see later, about what they try to talk about, and it's sad. I get so frustrated seeing these things, that they're teaching these kids this, and they're just literally indoctrinating them. I mean, this is infuriating. Like, the stuff 6,000 years old is what they're saying how old the Earth is. 6,000, and there's so much evidence to the contrary. It's preposterous to even think that is even remotely true. And the only evidence that they have to back up their claim is one book that is... There's nothing aside from the text. There's nothing demonstrable from it. It's just maddening.
They say Adam and Eve walked the earth with dinosaurs. And there was no such thing as death, not even meat-eating animals, until Eve ate fruit from the tree of knowledge. So, for instance, they say that Tyrannosaurus rex, with those enormous ripping teeth, was designed to eat vegetables.
If this creature was designed to eat meat from the very start, what would he have to do until Adam and Eve sinned and death entered the world? What would he have to do? Fast and pray for the fall. Is that likely? And the answer is, everybody look at me and say, no. Try that with me. No.
Okay, so now he's pointing out the fact that Tyrannosaurus Rex would have to pray and fast while he was on Earth before Adam and Eve sinned.
A dinosaur.
So that would be the only way that he would have been able to eat meat. So once again, the thing is, he's starting from a predefined conclusion that God already exists. So
and dinosaurs live with
and that
humans.
Adam and Eve lived with dinosaurs
65 million years ago.
No.
Well, sorry. I'm coming at this from what the hell. Dinosaurs existed 65 million years ago, but humans. There you go. Humans. For those that don't know evolution, humans have only been around for 100 to 200,000 years. Are Homo sapiens. Yeah.
So, and then it talks. I mean, you can look at a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and just by basic observations, you don't even have to have any scientific knowledge of things. You can look at a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you can determine based on how the bone structure is in the mouth and how the teeth are sharp that it's probably going to be a meat eater. It's not something that eats fruit. I mean, if we're going to go and argue from the design perspective of this creature to eat fruit,
gives it bad design.
Yeah, it gives it these tiny little arms that probably can't grasp onto anything, and then yet it, has these sharp teeth. What is it? Is it trying to grab an apple off of a tree? Just think how ridiculous.
An apple would definitely sustain a T-Rex.
Yeah.
Maybe orchards of apples.
Yeah, so it's once again, I just get so passionately angry about this stuff.
Their timeline for their 6,000-year history is a little hazy.
Before the flood, there was a period there which we believe people lived to be 800, 900 years old, maybe almost 1,000 years old.
So how long was that? How many generations of 800-year-old people did we have?
I haven't thought of that. Without doing the math, I think there's about 6 or 7.
And doing the math, that would take about 5,600 years, during which people lived roughly 800 years.
So from Adam to Noah, I think it's about 1,000 years. I could be wrong about that.
So you are wrong about that. Number one, you think people lived for 800 years. You believe this. You have no evidence except for the book, your circular reasoning. Oh, how do you know people lived 800 years? Because in Genesis it says so, they lived this long. Well, how do you know Genesis is right? Because God wrote it. How do you know God wrote it? Because the Bible says so. We just keep going in circles. We just keep going over and over again. And he talks about, he gets his math wrong to begin with. They even pointed out in this article saying that it's supposed to be roughly 5,600 years. And then he goes, well, I haven't done the math on this one. No surprise. I mean, shocking. You haven't done the math on this. You spew this vile vomit.
You teach this to kids hundreds of different times. You teach it to multiple dozens of kids every time. So we're talking over 1,000 kids a year. He's teaching this vile poison to them that they think dinosaurs were around when humans were around. I mean, it's ludicrous.
Yeah, just do your math. Get out there, read a book, do your research, and understand what evolution is. It's not just this, a fish gave birth to a coyote, and a coyote gave birth to a monkey, and a monkey gave birth to a man. It's not like this. It's not this simple, someone gave birth to something else type thing. It's these small, minute,
very small, millions and millions and millions of years of very specific genetic changes.
And this is not just one thing changing. It's like people start to think, well, okay, it took this long to change to a human, it took millions of years. There's so many different types of creatures on this earth that all these things are changing all the time. I mean, I am biologically, my parents, I have a lot of the same genes and a lot of the same biology as my parents, but I'm slightly different. Everybody is a transitional fossil. Everybody, they transition from their parents. You are not an exact replica of your parents. A dog is not an exact replica of a wolf. But that process was, obviously, a lot of that was man done. The
natural selection.
Yeah, the hibernization.
Or not natural.
The hibernization. Is that what it is? Where they.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, it's. Like we said, a monkey did not just give birth to a man. It's not like, my mom and my stepdad gave birth to some other species.
Selective breeding. There we go.
Selective breeding. There you go. That's the word for the wolf to the common domestic dog as we have today. But do your research, guys. Gosh, this is just. I don't think they've read one book on anything that has to do with evolution unless it's coming from their, predefined dogma.
Where did the material come that made the Big Bang? And they say it has always been in existence. That's their step of faith. Is evolution a religion?
Yes.
Yes, it's a religious belief, or it's a philosophy.
So now we get to the point of evolution being a religious belief based on the fact that where did everything come from before the Big Bang?
Yeah, this is where I would like to have a video so you can see me face palm. I'm just like, evolution is a religion? What?
Evolution is a fact. Things change over time. The theory about natural selection being the best possible explanation to how we have evolved from our ancestors, that's the theory. It's not a theory like, we think this is how it works. It is a model based on all the evidence that we have that fits perfectly into this idea that it's not even an idea. All the evidence makes this theory of evolution. All the evidence that we have about natural selection, it fits this theory, and it has not been proven wrong.
And it can't be proven wrong because we can demonstrate microevolution. We can look at bacteria and see it change.
The evolution itself is a fact. That can't be proven wrong. The theory of natural selection can be proven wrong. You find a rabbit in the Precambrian, below the Precambrian layer, that's going to disprove a lot of stuff that we know about evolution. I mean, that layer, we don't find anything from,
It doesn't disprove it, it gives you questions.
Yeah,
it just makes you, how did that happen? It doesn't disprove it.
I guess I wouldn't say it disproves it, yeah, but it's that would be a big cog in the wheel of our understanding of the theory of evolution based on natural selection. The thing is, we have falsifiable claims, and that's the biggest thing about any scientific claim, is that it has to be falsifiable. You can't just say, this creationist theory, not even theory, this creationist hypothesis, this creationist idea, claim, I guess, we'll go with the word claim, this creationist claim that they have is unfalsifiable. Right. I mean, how can you give me an example of how you would view a world that has not been created by God? Like, what would that look like to you? And explain why that is the case.
And then it says there was once an ancient sea.
At one exhibit, they stop and talk about fossils trapped in sandstone, estimated by scientists to be 6 million years old.
How do they date the fossil? By the layer in which they find it. They date the layer by the fossil, and the fossil by the layer, and the layer by the fossil. What kind of reasoning is that, by the way? That's called circular reasoning. That's right. That's right.
And then they turn their backs to an exhibit right next to it explaining radiometric dating, the method by which scientists do date rocks and fossils through the rate of decay of naturally occurring radioactivity.
We can't cover everything.
That is the basis for how they judge how old things are.
All dating methods are based on assumptions.
Circular reasoning. They go right into it.
The guy understands circular reasoning, but he doesn't see it applied to his own stupid logic.
That's the thing. You come up, you try to use science to disprove science, but you won't even use science to even like critically to look at your own claims critically. And it's circular reasoning. That's exactly what you're doing every time we try to like go on these.
And in that video, the guy that's saying we can't explain everything. Is that what he?
Yeah, he was talking about when because they omit the whole radioactive.
Right, they're like, we're just not going to look at that section of the museum, or.
Yeah, they just completely skip over that because that's going to be too confusing for them because they don't understand radiometric dating. They don't understand how that works. They don't understand. I mean, if they don't understand
science.
Yeah, and it just more fuel for the fodder of the idea that they're not doing their research.
What do you see right here? You're looking at the evidence of God's judgment against a sinful world. You're looking at the remains of the flood.
To them, evolution is an attack on their faith.
It is naturalism. That all there is really is nature, and everything comes from nature. And yes, that is antithetical to a supernaturalist worldview, if you will. That there is a God who created, put order into the universe. I come here for good science, not somebody's science fiction. I come here for facts, not somebody's fantasy. This is a fairy tale. How do they know your teeth evolved from scales? You got to ask that question. How do you know? Everybody try that with me? How do you know? Let's try it again. How do you know? Very well done.
So then they go through this thing of getting these kids to start questioning, how do you know, how do you know? But they don't teach them any type of critical thinking for themselves. All they're teaching them is these
snippets,
these talking points, these ways to get around, how do you know? Were you there? All these things that they just keep trying to bring up so that they can't analyze.
You know, I wouldn't even have that much of a big deal with this guy spewing this nonsense, but it's to kids. Yeah. He's teaching it to, not even teaching, he's dictating it to kids. He's like, I know I'm right about this. Repeat after me.
Yeah.
It's nothing short of, you know, I am the all-knowing. You're going to think this way. Critical thinking is not part of the discussion.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. You take a kid, you put him through regular schooling, you bring him up without bringing religion into their life. You don't have to you can just let him learn math and just basic science. We can even skip the whole evolution thing. Once he becomes a teenager, then bring up the topic about Genesis, that the world was created in 6 days, that there was a talking snake, that there was a giant flood that destroyed all of mankind, that this guy fit 2 of every animal onto an ark. Let's see if that kid believes it then. You are indoctrinating these kids into these beliefs. It's similar to the idea of Santa Claus, but except with Santa Claus, you actually don't believe in the Santa Claus, and you eventually tell the kid afterwards. Whereas you have this belief in a God, and it keeps that belief stays strong with the child as he grows older.
Yeah, you just keep adding fuel to your passion adds to their passion, and it's misguided.
God created the Earth, and it didn't evolve from a big asteroid. It took bajillions of years.
With the amount of damage happening to the Earth these days, all the crazy things, it would have fallen apart by now at millions and billions of years.
Well, what?
So they don't understand anything. These kids are so lost, and the way that they're teaching them is just it's to be like it's to come defensive to these topics. Like that girl was saying, oh, it didn't explode from all these things. Don't teach them to be defensive of these things. If they grow up and they're learning this stuff, and then and the evidence that they find most convincing is that of the creationist, then that's fine. But the thing is, you're teaching them at such a young age, and you're force feeding them this stuff. And I'm not for the whole teach both sides in school, because the thing is, in school you're supposed to teach what is fact, what the scientific community as a whole agree upon.
What has evidence behind it.
What has evidence behind it. You can take your kids, it's your right to take your kids to the Sunday school to teach them these things, that's fine. But in schools, public schools, this does not happen. That's where these
Well, it shouldn't happen, but it does. It does happen in some schools, like Texas. They're trying to get the both sides into their schools.
Again. And it's, you can teach them on your own. You can do this homeschooling thing, which in here, it's, I hate to say it, but it's fine that these kids are being taught by this person this nonsense.
Right, it's perfectly legal.
Yeah, you can do that. But just look at this. I mean, just think for yourselves.
Just think what is going to happen to these children as they grow up. Unless they get some significant outside influence that can deter them from this anti-critical thinking. It's literally moving away, turning your back on what we have evidence. It's turning your back on evidence, is what it is.
Right.
I've chosen to believe the God of the Bible. Now, the evolutionist has chosen not to believe the God of the Bible. So we've chosen to believe. They're both matters of faith.
And to them, science that does not support their faith is not good science.
How do we know that God made birds to be birds?
It's in the Bible.
It says it in the Bible.
And there we go. It says it in the Bible. The answer to all claims made by theists. It says it in the Bible. That is your science. That is your evidence for your creationism claims.
Because it's in the Bible, it must be true.
And then he talks about that creationists chose to believe in God. Evolutionists chose not to believe in God.
Yeah, see, that's curious too, because Catholics, don't they accept evolution?
Yeah, you can have a theist that believes in evolution. There's differences from young Earth creationists and old Earth creationists. But the other thing is, they start to, stumble upon another thing, that belief is a choice in this case. It's not a choice. I'm not choosing not to believe. I've accepted other evidence, and I found more evidence compelling, but I don't believe. It's not a chosen not to believe. Like, do you believe in Santa Claus? No. If you didn't choose to not believe in Santa Claus, if it was a choice, you could just switch, and I can choose to believe in him right now. But
right, you don't believe in Santa Claus because there's been no evidence ever that Santa Claus has ever existed. If there are no presents under your tree in the morning, it's not because Santa Claus put you on the naughty list. It's because your parents didn't buy you anything.
Yeah, it's we can have a whole other show about belief as a choice and not a choice, because it's also another interesting topic. But I mean, that's this video is just, it's infuriating. It's sad. It's maddening. And
so the reason we are even including this video in this podcast, because why would we promote, not promote, but even talk about these crazies out there? Well, because I think it's necessary to let people know that this is the reason we have these podcasts, so that this happens. There are reasons that we need to have no creationism in schools, in public schools. Because this type of stuff can happen. Because you can have people that will get into the circular reasoning of whatever the Bible says is true, and the Bible says this, therefore true. So you need to have factors in place. You need to have gates that say, that's not based on evidence. We're not going to put that in our textbooks. We're not going to teach our children that. If you want to do it on your own time, that's okay.
So I guess that's going to conclude our main topic of discussion for this week about religion and school. And we're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll come back with our logical fallacy of the episode. So, all right, we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. We're at the last segment of our podcast here, where we are going to be doing what we will have as a ending segment every time, which is going to be a logical fallacy, or at least until we run out of logical fallacies, which is probably going to be, which we'll
make up logical fallacies. No,
yeah, that's a logical fallacy.
Yeah.
What we also had planned on doing, I guess we can touch on it right now, is that we were going to have our Atheist Book Club, which was going to be part of this podcast, where we were going to discuss a book that we've chosen for our Atheist Book Club. And our first book of choice is the Bible. And obviously we're not going to read the entire Bible for the book club. That this first section was going to be Genesis 1 through 20, and we were going to discuss that. However, we're going to actually make that into a separate podcast that's going to post around the same time as this episode. It'll just be entirely focused on the book club. It'll be its own podcast every time.
It'll be its own episode.
Its own, episode...
A, B, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it could be episode 2A or Atheist Book Club Part 1 or something like that, ABC 1.
Right.
It's basically, we're going to be going through the Bible, and once, hopefully we'll finish the whole thing. That's actually kind of a goal of mine, to actually read the Bible from cover to cover. Once we finish that, we'll move on to other texts, and
religious and non-religious.
Yeah, religious and non-religious, and just kind of keep up that segment. So the Atheist Book Club will hopefully be as regular as this podcast. If not, we might be able to do it a little more regularly. I don't know. It depends on how we structure this, but we are going to be segmenting that outside of this podcast. So look for the Atheist Book Club. It should be the next one on the list for this week on the podcast downloads. All right, so with that out of the way, we will move on to our topic of logical fallacies. So let's start with Garrett. You want to give us a definition or kind of explain what a logical fallacy is?
Yeah, so a logical fallacy is a flaw in reasoning. So they can be considered... logical fallacies are tricks or illusions of thought, and they're often very sneakily used by politicians and the media to fool people. So, in a sense, it's arguments that are invalid, that don't have a logical or grounded basis to them.
Right.
So the reason we're even talking about logical fallacies is at some point in your deconversion, or you're just talking, if you are a Christian and you're talking to an atheist, you don't want to use faulty reasoning or faulty arguments or faulty logic. You want to debate somebody in a reasoned and thought out manner so that you both can get to either agreement on the topic, or at least you'll come to an understanding that you both know stuff about your topic. You don't want to jump down someone's throat and attack them in a way that doesn't have any logical reasoning behind it. It doesn't help the cause, it doesn't help your argument, and it makes you look stupid.
Right. So our logical fallacy this week that we're going to cover is called the No True Scotsman. I guess I can explain the fallacy and what it is by giving an example, basically the example of why it's called the No True Scotsman. So the example is Scotsman A and Scotsman B are sitting at a table, and they are eating porridge. And Scotsman A says to Scotsman B, he says, "No Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge." Scotsman B then proceeds to grab the sugar and pour it on his porridge. Now Scotsman A then says, well, no true Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. Now, let's kind of like extrapolate this story and see what the problem is. So Scotsman A has set a claim out at the beginning. He has said that no Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. So his claim is no Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. It's pretty simple. Scotsman B, who has already been has been defined as a Scotsman. He is a Scotsman.
He's Scottish.
He's Scottish. He goes and proceeds to put sugar on his porridge. Now this is now a contradiction. This is a direct contradiction, direct conflict to Scotsman A's original claim that Scotsmen do not put sugar on their porridge. Now, instead of Scotsman A admitting to the fact that, oh, well, maybe I was wrong, maybe some Scotsmen do put sugar on their porridge, he then shifts the goalposts and says, okay, well, no true Scotsman put sugar on his porridge. Now let's say he is.
He's not wrong. The Scotsman A can't be wrong.
Now Scotsman A can't be wrong. So if he found some, let's say Scotsman C, who Scotsman A thinks is a true Scotsman, and he sees Scotsman C put sugar on his porridge, then all he would say to that person was like, oh, well, he wasn't a true Scotsman.
Yep.
Even though at first he thought he was, but until the contradiction to the claim is seen by Scotsman A, he will then shift the goalpost and say, well, that's Scotsman C, he wasn't a true Scotsman. And I have an example that happened in a debate with a theist when he brought up the example of saying, well, how do you explain how do you explain people of other faiths like Muslims or Mormons or anything Hindu switching from their belief to Christianity? And I reply saying, oh, well, that's fine. People change religions all the time.
And I have a friend that was Baptist but is now converted to Judaism.
Right.
So it happens.
And then I say, well, I can ask the same question of you. How do you explain people who are of the Christian faith changing to other religions, to changing to Mormonism or Muslim, or even becoming an atheist? Then all he replies with, well, they weren't a true Christian. Because in his world, a true Christian is someone who never changes their faith. So that means that a Christian who changes their faith has now just been, he was never a Christian to begin with. No matter how much that person was into the religion, believed, was devout, no matter how much he was, since he changed, he was never a Christian to begin with. Now now you're at a losing point in an argument because there's no way to falsify this argument. You can't bring up any evidence to the contradiction of this argument. I mean, I can give a duck example where a guy sees a room full of white geese, so his immediate claim is all geese are white, and then all of a sudden a black goose walks in. Now he can either admit that he was wrong and saying, oh, I guess all geese aren't white, some geese are white. But instead he would say the logical fallacy of the no true Scotsman, saying, oh, well, that is not a true goose. And so it's just that he's shifting the burden, he's shifting the goalpost.
He's shifting the goalpost to make sure he's always right.
Right.
So another example, another religious example, it deals with abortion. So let's say someone, in this case they happen to be a Christian, is in favor of abortion, and they might be in favor of abortion for whatever reason. Maybe it's within the first trimester, and the doctors find out that the mother would be at high risk of death if she were to bear the child. So and then another Christian enters this conversation and says, Christians don't believe in abortion. All Christians are pro-life. Therefore, you're not a true Christian.
Right.
I mean, it's preposterous because there are many different people that have many different opinions on abortion, pro-life and pro-choice, and they are Christians and they are not Christians. So making a claim that is so blanket, such a blanket statement of, well, no Christian would ever be pro-choice. It doesn't have any logical basis behind it, because you can't possibly know every Christian.
Yeah, you're asserting the knowledge that you know for a fact that that person wasn't a true Christian to begin with. So
logical fallacy.
Logical fallacy of the
number one checked off.
No true Scotsman. So we'll hopefully be able to be, getting more logical fallacies. We have this poster here with a slew of logical fallacies on it that we're going to go through and talk about each episode. And once we run out, maybe we'll find another topic to put in our third segment. So,
yeah, there's at least 30 well-documented logical fallacies. Yeah. So we will go over each and every one, and try to give as many examples as we can. And we encourage anyone listening, if you have a great concrete example of a logical fallacy, whether it's something we've already gone over or something we've yet to cover, please let us know, because or if you've had an experience arguing with somebody and they use just ridiculous logic in their statements or in arguments with you, let us know. Examples are great.
Yeah, and with that, let's get to the wrap up here. As Garrett was saying, let us know at our email address, talk@theinquisitiveatheists.com. It's it's exactly how the name of the podcast is spelled, theinquisitiveatheists.com, and that's talk at TALK. And you can also get a hold of us via Twitter. I'm at JSO2K, and Garrett is at Garrett Geisler. We should probably maybe spell that one out. It's GarrettGeisler, at Garrett Geisler. And mine's just at JASO, JASO, the number 2 and the letter K.
And as a reminder, we're splitting up our Bible study / atheist book club. And that will be on a separate episode.
Yep.
But if you're interested, please check it out. We split it up so that we could better regulate and better direct people that want to listen to our podcasts, and maybe they want to focus only on our readings that will center around their faith.
Yeah. So with that, I guess. Thanks for listening. It was another fun podcast. I had a lot of fun discussing some of those videos.
Yeah, it was good.
It's very passionate, and so
the videos are great, and it's fun to commentate. And I want to mention, and I don't think we've said it yet, we got a new microphone. So please let us know how it sounds. We apologize for any little blips. This thing picks up literally every little movement, and
it was professional at first, but then we've ghettoed it out. We have the microphone on top of a pillow, on top of a cork coaster, but
underneath the pillow there's a book as well.
Yeah, it was originally on the table, and I noticed that in the first segment it was picking up any little bumps or hits on the table. So hopefully it sounds a lot better. Let us know in the feedback. But thanks again for listening. We'll be back hopefully in about another 2 weeks, and we will see you then. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.
God's ain't gonna help you, son. You'll be sorry for what you